and the Saints go marching in.
This isn't all in the past, because you're writing this now. You've got people around you who are part of the history. We talk about the Illawarra side of the equation. You've got the greatest Illawarra player of all time sitting there as your coach. And you look at his playing record, remarkable, great player. He captained the first St George Illawarra side in that 1999 grand final, where quite a few refereeing decisions, still rankle, but that's another story. But you've got him among you. You've got Albert Young, you've got Benny Hornby, you've got Matty Head, Dean Young. You've got these people who are part of this history, and you can track it back. And I mentioned Harry Bath, who arrived at the club at 32, with all of that skill from England. He was going to bring aggression and ball skills. Well, I think we can say that's coming from this bloke as well. Johnny King, pick up the book and read what they say about Johnny King, the great finishing winger. You could be reading about Jason Nightingale. They talk about how he's always there. His centres know he's always there. He knows how to find the line. He knows how to score a try. You won't score 6 tries, but you've scored 2 tries in the only grand final you've played in so far. So it's pretty good, and you were, in many minds, the player of the match in that game from the wing. So that was something very special that I'll always remember.
Duff, John Stanley came to training to talk the boys through the history of the club. The 11 premierships obviously was a big focus. Learning that and listening to that, mate, as a local junior, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's given me some perspective on the rich history of the club, like especially being from St George as a local junior, and then just seeing there's people out there like fans that know every detail, and it's pretty overwhelming to see people that passionate about the club. Really makes you want to perform and make them proud.
Oh, it was really exciting, to hear all the history, about the club from John Stanley. It was a real eye-opener for me. I knew it was a pretty famous club, but hear about all the great players and all the premierships the club's won. It's pretty special.
We're here with avid Dragons fan and veteran 2UE broadcaster John Stanley, mate. Welcome to the Dragons. You obviously came to the club today to talk to boys about a bit of history. How was that for an experience for you, first and foremost?
It was interesting because, look, the truth is that I'm a fan, and so I'm sitting here looking at some of these players in whom I've invested a lot of, hope for the new year, but I was also able to talk to them about the past, because I think in the past what we've done is we've talked about the great premierships of the past, 11 premierships in a row, rich history of the club, and that maybe we should try and move on from all of that, whereas people like Norm Provan say embrace it, because these guys can be as good as they were. They can make their own history, and that's the message I had for them. There's so many things you can relate to the past and have a look at this present group, and I think if they appreciate that history and embrace it, it's a good thing.
I think a big message you put to the boys as well is that history is still being written. Yeah. That's true, isn't it?
That's right. And if you read I think I call it the Old Testament of this club, never before, never again. That's the Old Testament. The New Testament's still being written. But in the Old Testament, when you read about it, you read about how certain players started to generate a bit of buzz in the district, like when Johnny King started playing, he was with Arncliffe Scots, at Reg Gasnier with the famous Renown club. Well, the same thing's happening now with some of these young guys. We're hearing about them, we hear the buzz, we're waiting for them to get into first grade. So that they're writing their history, and years from now we might talk about the first time we saw one of these great young players play and go on to greatness.
Do you remember your first game of the Dragons that you ever attended, mate?
Well, unfortunately, because of my age, I couldn't actually get to any games, and I'm pretty sure my first Dragons game would have been sometime in 1967, and it may well be the game where they lost to Canterbury on the SCG when the run came to an end, the preliminary final, lost by a point. And I remember standing on the hill in tears. I think that might have been my first game, because I was raised by my mum, so it was difficult to get to the games, so I followed them from a distance. But I think that was my first game. So, like a lot of Dragons fans, it was a bit of disappointment, but every disappointment makes the ultimate victory sweeter.
Leading into 2018 season, mate, everyone's got pretty high hopes for the Dragons. You yourself, pretty excited?
I'm very excited. I mean, James Graham and Ben Hunt, I told them, I think they're the sort of players we've looked at and thought we'd love to have them playing for our club. And then you've got guys like Jack de Belin. Jack de Belin plays a bit like James Graham. And so imagine what he's going to learn from playing with James Graham. You look at Ben Hunt, we've got a halfback to run the show. We've got some of these exciting young backs. Zach Lomax and Jay Field, and got Luciano Leilua. I'm really excited about the prospects for 2018. You know, anything can happen. Of course, there can be injuries, all sorts of stuff, but it's looking pretty good based on what I can see.